In the year 2147, humanity stood on the edge of a decision that would change everything. For decades, humans had been trying to make peace with an alien species called the Vrika. These aliens were tall, with shimmering blue skin and eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. They spoke in soft tones but carried an air of mystery that made many humans uneasy. The two races had come together for talks on Titan's moon, a neutral place far from Earth. It was supposed to be a step toward understanding each other better. James Carter, the lead negotiator for humanity, sat at the long table inside the council chambers. His face was tense, his hands gripping the edge of the table as he stared across at the Vrika ambassador. The room was quiet, except for the hum of machines keeping the air breathable. James had spent years working toward this moment, believing that peace was possible if both sides could just listen. But today, something felt different. Today, things fell apart. Earlier that morning, a report came in from Earth's defense network. Satellites near Neptune had picked up unusual activity, large ships moving into position around the outer edges of the solar system. At first, no one knew what to think. Were these trading vessels, or something more dangerous? Then came the confirmation. The ships belonged to the Vrika, and they weren't alone. There were hundreds of them, maybe even thousands. James tried to stay calm when he heard the news. He reminded himself that military movements didn't always mean war. Still, doubt crept into his mind. Why hadn't the Vrika mentioned this during their discussions? Why keep it hidden? When he brought it up in the meeting, the Vrika ambassador gave a vague answer about routine exercises. Routine or not, James couldn't ignore the growing unease among his team. Rachel Monroe, his assistant, leaned over and whispered urgently in his ear. "We can't trust them anymore," she said. Her voice was low, but her words hit hard. James nodded slowly. She was right. If the Vrika were preparing for battle while pretending to negotiate, then humanity was walking into a trap. Without another word, James pushed back his chair and stood up. Every eye in the room turned to him. The Vrika ambassador tilted its head slightly, studying him with those glowing eyes. James took a deep breath and spoke clearly. "This meeting is over." His voice echoed through the chamber, sharp and final. Then, without waiting for a response, he turned and walked out, his boots clicking against the metal floor. Rachel followed close behind, clutching a folder filled with notes and data. Neither of them said anything until they reached the hallway outside. Only then did James let out a frustrated sigh. "What are we doing here?" he asked, running a hand through his hair. "If they're planning to attack us, why waste time talking?" Rachel shook her head. "I don't know, but we need to warn Earth. Now." Back inside the council chambers, the Vrika ambassador watched the door where James had disappeared. Its expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of movement in its glowing eyes, a hint of concern, or perhaps anger. Whatever it was, the tension in the room grew thicker. Peace talks had ended before they truly began, leaving only silence and unanswered questions behind. On Earth, people waited anxiously for updates. News outlets buzzed with speculation about what had happened on Titan. Some called for immediate action, demanding that humanity prepare for war. Others urged patience, reminding everyone how fragile these negotiations were. No one knew exactly what the future held, but one thing was certain: the fragile bond between humans and the Vrika had snapped. What came next would shape the fate of both races and, possibly, the entire galaxy. The news of the failed peace talks spread quickly across Earth. Within hours, every major city was buzzing with rumors and fear. People gathered in streets and squares, watching massive screens showing live updates from Titan's moon. The image of James Carter walking out of the council chambers became a symbol of humanity's frustration and distrust. Social media exploded with hashtags like #NoMoreNegotiations and #ProtectEarthNow. It seemed everyone had an opinion, but few agreed on what to do next. in New York City. Leaders from around the world came together for an emergency meeting at the United Nations headquarters. The room was packed, with delegates sitting shoulder to shoulder at long tables, arranged in a horseshoe shape. At the center stood Sarah Bennett, the U.S. representative. Her sharp features and confident stance made her stand out even among the most experienced politicians. She held up a tablet displaying satellite images of the Vrika ships near Neptune. "This is not just a threat," she said, her voice firm and clear. "It's a declaration of intent. If we don't act now, they'll have the upper hand. We can't let that happen." Her words drew murmurs of agreement from some corners of the room, but others remained silent, their faces etched with worry. Benjamin Cole, the British delegate, leaned forward in his chair. He was older than most in the room, with gray hair, and glasses perched on the tip of his nose. "Acting rashly will only make things worse," he countered. "We don't know why those ships are there. Maybe it's not about us at all. Jumping to conclusions could start a war we're not ready for." Sarah shot him a glare. "And doing nothing could mean the end of us. Do you really want to wait until their weapons are pointed at Earth?" The argument escalated quickly. Voices rose as delegates shouted over one another, each trying to be heard. Some accused others of being too aggressive. Others called them cowards. The moderator pounded his gavel repeatedly, but the noise drowned him out. Chaos ruled the room, and no one seemed able to bring order. Meanwhile, outside the building, crowds grew larger by the minute. Protesters carried signs, reading "Stand Strong" and "No Alien Invasion." Reporters shoved microphones toward anyone who looked important, hoping for a soundbite. Among the chaos stood Laura Kim, a scientist who specialized in studying alien cultures. She watched the scene unfold with growing unease. To her, this wasn't just politics, it was a disaster waiting to happen. Laura turned to David Harper, a former soldier who now worked as an advocate for peace. They had met years ago, during a conference on interstellar diplomacy, and stayed in touch ever since. "This is exactly what I feared," Laura said quietly. "Fear clouds judgment. Once people start panicking, rational thinking goes out the window." David nodded grimly. "And when that happens, mistakes are made. Mistakes that cost lives." Back inside the UN chamber, tempers continued to flare. A delegate from China slammed his fist on the table, declaring that his country would take matters into its own hands if the council couldn't agree on a plan. Russia's representative echoed the sentiment, warning that patience had limits. The U.S. military presence in space was already mobilizing, though officially denied by government spokespeople. As the day wore on, it became clear that no decision would be reached. The meeting ended abruptly when several delegates stormed out, refusing to listen any longer. Sarah Bennett lingered behind, staring at the empty chairs where unity should have been. For the first time, she felt unsure. Had she pushed too hard, or was she right to demand action? Outside, night fell over the city. Lights flickered in skyscrapers, reflecting off rain-slicked streets. Humanity stood divided, unsure of what tomorrow would bring. In the distance, stars twinkled faintly, reminder of how small Earth truly was in the vastness of space. Dr. Emily Hayes stared at the glowing screen in front of her, her fingers flying across the keyboard as lines of data scrolled past. She was aboard the Eclipse, a research station orbiting Earth that served as humanity's eyes and ears in deep space. The station was quiet, except for the faint hum of machinery and the occasional beep of instruments. Emily had always loved this solitude, gave her time to think, to focus. But tonight, her thoughts were anything but calm. For weeks, strange signals had been coming through the station's long-range scanners. At first, they seemed like random bursts of energy, nothing unusual in the vast emptiness of space. But as Emily dug deeper, patterns began to emerge. The signals weren't random at all. They were deliberate, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat, pulsing through the void. And their origin. somewhere beyond Neptune's orbit, close to where the Vrika ships had been spotted. Emily leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. Her heart raced as she pieced together what the data might mean. Whatever was out there wasn't just a fleet of ships. It was something bigger, much bigger. She pulled up a holographic map of the solar system and zoomed in on the region where the signals were strongest. A cluster of red dots appeared, marking the positions of the Vrika vessels. But surrounding them was something else, a massive structure, slowly taking shape. Her hands trembled as she adjusted the settings, trying to get a clearer picture. It looked like a ring, enormous and metallic, with intricate designs etched into its surface. Emily's mind raced with possibilities. Was it a weapon, a shield, or something entirely unknown to human science? She couldn't be sure, but one thing was certain. This changed everything. She knew she had to share her findings, but who would believe her? Governments were already on edge, and the last thing anyone needed was more panic. Still, she couldn't stay silent. After encrypting the data, she sent 2 messages, one to Earth's Defense Headquarters and another to the Vrika Embassy. Both were short and direct. Urgent. Need to discuss recent discoveries. Please respond. Hours passed, but no reply came. Frustration bubbled inside her. She tried reaching out to colleagues, but most dismissed her claims as speculative or worse, alarmist. One scientist even suggested she take a break, implying she was overworked. Emily clenched her fists. She didn't have time for skepticism. If her suspicions were right, humanity was running out of time, desperate for help. Emily reached out to someone outside official channels. Daniel Ross was a journalist known for uncovering secrets others wanted hidden. He had a reputation for being relentless, sometimes reckless, but he cared about the truth. Emily trusted him more, at least trusted his ability to make people listen. She sent him a secure message, asking for a meeting, careful not to reveal too much in case it was intercepted. The next day, Emily received a response. Daniel agreed to meet her secretly on Luna Station, a neutral hub often used by traders and travelers. Relieved but still uneasy, Emily packed the data onto a portable drive and prepared for the journey. As she boarded the shuttle that would take her to the moon, she glanced out the window at Earth spinning below. The planet looked so small, so fragile. For the first time, she felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. If she was wrong, she'd look foolish. If she was right, the fate of humanity might depend on her next move. The shuttle launched, leaving the safety of the station behind. Emily stared at the stars streaking past her window, her mind racing with questions. What was the Vrika building out there? And why hadn't they told anyone about it? Most importantly, could she convince anyone to believe her before it was too late? As the shuttle sped toward Luna Station, Emily whispered to herself, "Please let me be wrong." Yet deep down, she feared she wasn't. The shuttle touched down on Luna Station with a soft hiss, and Emily stepped out into the bustling corridor. The station was alive with activity traders haggling over prices, engineers repairing equipment, and travelers rushing to catch their flights. Neon signs flickered above shops selling everything from snacks to spare parts for Emily adjusted the strap of her bag, feeling out of place among the crowd. She wasn't used to such chaos. Her work on the Eclipse had kept her isolated for years. But tonight, she couldn't afford to stand out. Daniel Ross waited near a cafe, at the far end of the concourse. He was easy to spot, tall, with messy brown hair and a leather jacket that looked like it had seen better days. When he saw Emily approaching, he waved her over with a grin. "You must be Dr. Hayes," he said, extending a hand. His voice was warm but carried an edge of curiosity. "Thanks for coming." Emily shook his hand quickly, glancing around too. Make sure no one was watching. "We need to talk somewhere private," she said in a low voice. Daniel nodded and led her toward a quiet corner of the station where maintenance tunnels branched off from the main pathways. They ducked into one of these tunnels, finding an empty storage room lit only by dim emergency lights. Once inside, Emily pulled the portable drive from her bag and connected it to a small projector Daniel had brought along. A holographic image sprang to life between them, showing the mysterious ring-shaped structure beyond Neptune's orbit. Daniel leaned closer, studying the details. "What is this?" he asked, his brow furrowing. "That's what I've been trying to figure out," Emily replied. "It's massive, larger than anything humans have ever built, and it's surrounded by Vrika ships. My guess, it's not just a random construction project. Whatever it is, it's important." Daniel crossed his arms, thinking. "Do you think it's a weapon?" "I don't know," Emily admitted. "But if it is, we're in trouble. Even if it's not, the fact that they're keeping it hidden doesn't sit well with me. We need proof before we can go public. Otherwise, no one will take us seriously." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then we'll get proof. If we can get close enough to capture images or video, people won't be able to ignore it." Emily hesitated. "Getting close won't be easy. The area is heavily guarded. If we're caught." "We won't get caught," Daniel interrupted firmly. "I've got contacts who can help us blend in. We'll pose as cargo haulers. No one pays attention to them out there." The plan sounded risky, but Emily didn't have a better option. She agreed reluctantly, and together they began preparing for the mission. Daniel reached out to a friend who owned a small freighter called the Starlight Runner. The ship was old and battered, but functional enough to pass as a legitimate trade vessel. Within hours, they were aboard, disguised as crew members. Emily wore a patched-up jumpsuit and a cap pulled low over her face, while Daniel sported a fake beard and tinted goggles. As the Starlight Runner left Luna Station, Emily stared out the viewport at the receding curve of Earth. Her stomach churned with nerves. What if they failed? What if they were wrong? But then she thought about the data, about the signals she'd traced, and her resolve hardened. They had to try. The journey to the outer colonies took nearly 2 days. During that time, Emily and Daniel reviewed every detail of their plan. They would approach the construction site under the guise of delivering supplies, using forged credentials Daniel had procured. Once inside the perimeter, they'd use handheld cameras to document everything they could before slipping away unnoticed. When they finally arrived, the sight was breathtaking and terrifying. The ring loomed ahead of them, its surface gleaming faintly in the light of distant stars. Dozens of Vrika warships patrolled the area, their sleek forms cutting through space like knives. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just a structure, it was a statement. "Stay sharp," Daniel whispered as they guided the ship closer. "One mistake, and we're done." Emily nodded, gripping the console tightly. For the first time in her life, she understood what true fear felt like, but she also knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened next, the truth was worth fighting for. Back on Earth, the situation was growing worse by the hour. While Emily and Daniel prepared to uncover the truth about the Vrika's mysterious structure, tensions among humanity's leaders reached a boiling point. Rumors of secret military movements spread like wildfire, fueling distrust and fear. Some factions within Earth's governments had decided they couldn't wait for answers. They would act first and ask questions later. General Patrick O'Connor paced the control room of a hidden military base buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Screens lined the walls, displaying real-time updates from satellites and drones scattered across the solar system. His face was grim as he listened to reports of unauthorized attacks carried out by rogue elements of Earth's fleet. A convoy of Vrika supply ships near Saturn had been ambushed just hours earlier, resulting in heavy casualties. The attackers hadn't claimed responsibility, but everyone knew who was behind it: humans, unwilling to sit idly by while negotiations fell apart. Patrick clenched his fists, frustration bubbling inside him. He hated this chaos, this breakdown of order. For years, He had believed in diplomacy, in finding peaceful solutions. But now, with evidence of Vrika forces massing near Earth's borders, he wasn't so sure. Was it possible to negotiate with an enemy that might already be planning an invasion? Still, he refused to give up hope entirely. "We need to hold them accountable," he muttered to his aide, a young officer named Lisa Meyer. "But not like this, not without proof." Lisa nodded nervously, her eyes darting between the general and the screens. She didn't envy his position. Every decision he made could mean life or death for millions of people. "Sir, what do we do if more attacks happen?" she asked quietly. "We stop them," Patrick replied sharply. "If we let this spiral out of control, there won't be any coming back from it." Meanwhile, in New York City, Sarah Bennett watched news reports of the attack on the Vrika convoy. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the edge of her desk. Part of her felt vindicated. She had warned the Council that humanity needed to act decisively. But another part of her worried. Had these rogue actions made things even worse? Would the Vrika see this as a declaration of war? Her phone buzzed incessantly with calls from reporters and politicians demanding statements. She ignored them all, focusing instead on drafting a response to the crisis. It was a delicate balancing act, condemning the violence while also preparing for the possibility of retaliation. As she worked, her thoughts drifted to James Carter. Where was he now? What was he doing? She wondered if he regretted walking away from the peace talks or if he felt justified. Elsewhere, protests continued to erupt in cities worldwide. Some groups called for immediate war against the Vrika, carrying banners that read "Defend our home." Others pleaded for restraint, holding signs that said peace is possible. The divide between these factions grew wider each day, tearing communities apart. In London, Benjamin Cole addressed a crowd of demonstrators, urging them to remain calm. "Violence solves nothing," he said, his voice steady despite the shouts of disagreement around him. "We must find another way." But words alone weren't enough to quell the rising tide of anger. Military bases around the globe reported increased activity as troops prepared for potential conflict. China announced plans to deploy its fleet independently, followed swiftly by Russia and the United States. Each nation claimed it was acting in self-defense, but the message was clear. Unity was crumbling amidst the turmoil. Laura Kim and David Harper worked tirelessly to rally support for their cause. They organized meetings with scientists, activists, and anyone willing to listen, arguing that humanity couldn't afford to abandon diplomacy. "The Vrika aren't monsters," Laura insisted during one such gathering. "They're intelligent beings, just like us. There has to be a reason for what they're doing." David nodded, adding, "And until we know that reason, we can't jump to conclusions. Acting out of fear will only make things worse." Despite their efforts, skepticism lingered. Many dismissed them as idealists clinging to false hope. But Laura and David refused to give up. If humanity went to war, they knew it wouldn't just be soldiers paying the price. It would be everyone. Families, children, entire generations would suffer. That thought kept them going, even when it seemed no one else cared. As night fell over Earth, the planet braced itself for what might come next. Stars twinkled above, indifferent to the chaos below. Somewhere beyond Neptune, Emily and Daniel moved closer to the truth. And somewhere in the hearts of millions, a fragile spark of hope still burned, though whether it would survive the storm ahead remained to be seen.